Good morning to our viewers here in Nigeria, those watching us online from every part of the world. Thank you very much for joining us on Friday morning's edition of Breakfast Central. I am Osaogi Ogbowan. It's interesting to be back here in our Lagos studios after a very interesting run and production in the Federal Capital Territory, broadcasting live from the Nigerian Economic Summit. We're finally back here, and we hope that you enjoyed the conversations that we did have in the FCT. We encourage you to be a part of the conversations this morning simply by tweeting at News Central TV or sharing your views on YouTube for those who are watching us online. Good morning, everyone, once again.
That's right. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Africa. It feels good to be back all the way from the Federal Capital Territory, like Osage had said. Most importantly, having been part of the Nigerian Economic Summit and having to hear firsthand from the experts, the economists, and not forgetting to the federal government. We did make a lot of connections with those who have shared and aired their views on the possibility of having an economy that would indeed grow or outgrow the previous. But then again, we do know the reality on ground that Nigerians are indeed struggling with the current economic situation, and hopefully we just might get out of it. But we are back, and it's time for Breakfast Central, taking a look at some of the biggest and top stories making the headlines. I'm going to start off first by saying one story that has gotten everyone talking, especially this morning, takes us straight to East Africa, Kenya to be precise, where the vice president, the VP himself, Gachagua, is looking to be replaced. Not just that, he is looking to be impeached. Now, that impeachment process did take a severe turn yesterday on Thursday, particularly when the House had convened. And even though his lawyer, Muite, tried as much as possible to ensure that they could actually push a motion to move the sitting up to Saturday, that did not in any way hold water, because the House was still able to convene, and then they went on to say, you know what, we think it's high time for him to go. Although he has come out to say that it's politically motivated, he's done nothing wrong. But this begs the question and brings back to the home frontier in Nigeria, seeing that a vice president in an East African country could go through this. How much more of other countries who would actually be watching carefully? Is there a possibility that something similar could happen even in our local governments here in Nigeria? Well, I'll leave that thought to you to think about, most importantly, as you ponder over the situation and the current issues bedeviling Kenya, especially with the economical challenges. And there you have the VP also going through his. Well, Osage, I don't know what story also tickles your fancy this Friday morning.
So I mean, it's interesting seeing what's going on in Kenya, and everyone is going to have their own views on whether this is politically motivated or this is done, really to show the value systems, of the Kenyan assembly. But whichever way whatever the reasons are, what we can clearly see here is that they have a democratic system that, mostly shows the strength of each arm of government, from the, legislative, the executive, and then the judiciary. We can see it clearly working out here. However this turns out, best of luck to the people of Kenya there. But for me, I think, the story that I'm mostly focused on is the one I think that we've been talking about since Monday, I believe, or Tuesday, with the World Bank vice president at the Nigerian Economic Summit, saying to Nigerians that it would take about 10 to 15 years of continued economic reforms that we're currently seeing for Nigeria to establish some sort of growth. And a lot of people were very uncomfortable with it, because many Nigerians don't have 10 years within them to continue with the same trajectory. The major challenge here is not because Nigerians aren't interested in economic reforms. It's mostly because they do not trust the current economic reforms and the little details surrounding it. If you remember, the vice president on Monday, during his speech, mentioned safety nets, social safety nets, as some of the things that they would need to put in place. But the challenge with that, again, is that these are things that should have been done before the economic reform started. You do not do reforms and then start safety nets later. And of course, him talking about safety nets that they would need to put in place there's still no actual clarity on what these safety nets are. If we are going to go on with the current economic reforms, how can Nigerians afford it? If you remember, on Wednesday or Tuesday, one of the newspaper headlines, showed how much a family of four would need to be able to afford 1 meal a day. It was about 150,000 naira. The current minimum wage is 70,000 naira. As of this morning, we are still having conversations about Labour and the Nigerian government, discussing on how they will be able to implement this new minimum wage and how Nigerians will be able to survive the current economic reforms. Yeah. And one of the things that they said in that conversation with the presidency was that they were going to encourage or have a discussion, a meeting with state governors to try to encourage them to pay 70,000 naira minimum wage, which means that we still are not confident that every state can even afford 70,000 naira, or that every state is willing to pay 70,000 naira minimum wage. For a family of four that is meant to spend 150,000 naira to just be short of 1 meal a day here in Nigeria. So it's not, again, not because Nigerians are stubborn or just do not want economic reform, is that it is not realistic for the average Nigerian to wait 10, 15 years and survive with current economic realities before Nigeria starts to breathe some fresh air with the economy. And the Nigerian government must put these things into consideration. There's still, I've repeatedly talked about the lack of clarity. Almost everyone that I spoke with at the Nigerian Economic Summit, almost everyone would repeatedly say that, yes, economic reforms are necessary. The Nigerian government needs to do what it needs to do. But many of them still threw in, their bits of doubt here and there, either with the communication from the presidency, the communication from the government in general, or with the way that the economic reforms are being portrayed to the Nigerian. I remember the head of the Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I believe, when I spoke with him, had almost zero faith in what we currently were doing or were experiencing. So it's a lot of talk, a lot of propositions, a lot of policies. Remember from the summit, a lot of policies. How many of them will be fully implemented? How many of them would we be able to see light at the end of the tunnel with? At the end of these policies. We also have a problem where we have policies that only last 4 years. When a new administration comes in, they throw that policy away, bring in a new one. If you look at the trajectory of growth that we've had between 1999 and 2007, I think that's when it was said that we had the best growth trajectory. If you look at that, it was because the government at that time were able to maintain certain policies on a long run, and we're able to achieve that. But since then, with every new government, breakage in policies, breakage in our policy directions and all of that, we never get to see any growth. I apologize, I'm rambling a little bit, but there's just so much to unpack from the last 3 days. So much. Yeah.
So much. We've barely even touched some of the very key points that we did get at the NES this year. But one of the key things for me, one of the key take-homes is that some of the attendants or attendees had made mention that a little difference is what they got from this year's event compared to that of last year. And the reason they say there seems to be a lot of talk, but very little implementation. I think the problem simply is from the implementation space, where these policies, these reforms, these ideas, these conversations are had, and then implementation simply is a major problem. But then again, that's for the NES. One story that also caught my attention as we talk about different things as happened in the past 24 hours is a story that had to do with an incident that took place at the NIPCO filling station in Benin Auchi Road. The explosion of a car that had been converted to the compressed natural gas, the CNG. The videos are everywhere. They're on social media. There was an explosion, and this was because the car owner was trying to fill his tank. Now, this again has gotten Nigerians talking, wondering if the CNG process is one that every Nigerian would like or want to try. Now, don't forget that the federal government has mentioned that there are CNG buses. We haven't seen them, though. We haven't seen them across Nigeria. They had said they would be operational for the past 6 months, and this it's beyond 6 months since it was mentioned. Even before 6 months ago, when they said it would be available to all Nigerians to help ease the stress and reduce the cost of transportation from moving from point A to point B, much more like to help Nigerians alleviate the suffering. But yet again, we've not seen that. So many Nigerians are skeptical about converting their cars from being fuel-based to CNG, and that's exactly what you see on the screen there. I was opportunity to speak to a professional, one who has been canvassing for the federal government not to push CNG vehicles, but rather to push electronic vehicles. And it's easier, according to him, it's easier to even set up because all you need to do is just get the cars and ensure that these stations are, centered in different parts of cities, states, and so on. Most importantly, you can also power them up. You've got inverters, you've got different ways to do that, solar system. So when people drive, they see that their cars are losing charge. You could simply just park, recharge, and then move ahead. But CNG, according to the federal government, is the way to go. And that's an example. Now, this is one of the fears because we know, let's be honest, we know within ourselves that some of us would always cut corners, practically. We would always find a way to cut corners. And this is exactly one of the examples we're seeing. So the questions are everywhere. Everybody's asking, is this, after my ardent, for goodness sakes, the cheapest car is no longer cheap. It's no longer affordable. Let me use that word.
I mean, let's be honest. We're not there yet. The whole narrative about CNG is really just, if we're being honest, it's just a lot of talk. If you look at the countries, that currently are, using CNG, don't even compare us to any other country. Nigeria itself is not there yet. No current government, I mean, except I am completely wrong, but I don't think there's any current governor, permanent secretary, senator, member of the executive, member of the judiciary that is currently using CNG. So them encouraging Nigerians to go to CNG as, is a cheaper way of getting energy or movement for your cars is all just talk. We're not there yet. The government's talking about providing 45 buses to Labour as their own donation to the CNG, conversion and the whole conversation is all just talk. I don't know what 45 buses are going to do, for 200 million
across
Nigerians. Nigeria. Again, it's all just talk. When the presidency converts their own cars, when Mr. President is currently using CNG, when governors use their cars with CNG, they will know that we're
That's
serious.
the case of lead by example, right?
Yeah, it's all just talk. Anyway, thanks again for starting your morning with us. Let's quickly share with you what our top stories are, then bring you breakfast headlines.
A quick look at our top stories this morning. Rivers Assembly threatened Amaewhule-led lawmakers with a lawsuit. That's exactly what they've done. So it's heating up right there. We'll talk about that story. Reps warn of unrest as federal government Labour meeting ends in deadlock. No agreement yet, so no communique for now. Naira ranks among Africa's weakest currency, falls to 43%. And the economy, not looking bad though. INEC fixes date for Ondo Anambra state elections. And then we'll also bring to you the front pages of the newspaper. But for now, let's bring to you breakfast headlines.
We begin the news in West Africa, Nigeria, with the update on the fuel tanker tragedy in Jigawa State, where we understand that the death toll from the explosion in Niger has risen to 153, with 100 people hospitalized. Police spokesperson DSP Lawan Shisu confirmed the updated figures. Victims have been buried in a mass grave, while the injured are currently receiving treatment at various hospitals, including Aminu Kano and Gumel. Governor Omar Namadi expressed deep sorrow over the tragedy, visiting the site and attending the mass burial as well. And the federal government has issued a warning to Nigerians living near the River Benue to move to safer areas as water levels rise due to heavy rainfall. The Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency, NIHSA, raised the alarm, saying the flooding risk is high. NIHSA Director General Umar Mohammed also advised those along the River Niger to relocate as dam managers at Kenji and Jeba work to control water flow. He urged Nigerians to cooperate with emergency agencies to minimize flood damage. Still in the news, Nigerian senators have unanimously passed a vote of confidence in the leadership of the Senate President Godswill Akpabio in a show of solidarity. This comes in response to social media report on Wednesday suggesting that some northern senators were plotting to impeach the Senate president. During Thursday's plenary, former Senate leader Yahya Abdullahi raised a point of order addressing the allegations and expressing his concerns about the publication that claimed northern senators were behind the impeachment move. A federal high court in Abuja has adjourned a 2 billion naira fundamental rights enforcement suit filed by former caretaker chairman of Southern Niger local government, Jigawa State, Mr. Lucky Okode, until November 28th. Justice Binta Nyako made the decision on Thursday after Okode's counsel, Amaewhule-led, requested more time to respond to a counter-affidavit filed by the legal representative for the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa. Also in the news, we now head to Central Africa, where Chadian President Mohamed Idris Deby has made sweeping changes to the country's defense and security leadership just days after the dismissal of the security minister. In a decree issued late Wednesday, several high-ranking officials were removed from their positions, including the Director Generals of both the police and military police, the Chief of General Staff of the Armed Forces, and the commanders of the National Nomadic Guard. They have all been reassigned to other roles. This follows Saturday's announcement on state television that Security Minister Mahamat Shafadine Magui has been replaced by General Ali Ahmad Akabashi. This reshuffle comes amid growing political and security tensions in the Central African nation. And now in East Africa, Kenyan Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has fallen ill just minutes before he was set to take the stand as a key witness. This is according to his lawyer, Paul Muite. Meanwhile, Senate Speaker Amaewhule Kingi has since suspended the impeachment trial, giving Gachagua's legal team 2 hours to locate him. However, Amaewhule Kingi said failure to do that, the hearing will continue without the deputy president. And that's all on Breakfast Headlines. Let's now move back to Breakfast Central and get into our top stories. I am Osaogie Ogbawa.
Nigeria's electoral body, the Independent National Electoral Commission, has fixed Saturday, the 8th of November 2025, for the off-cycle Anambra State governorship poll. The electoral body, while meeting with heads of political parties as part of its 4th regular consultative meeting, also informed those present of the preparation for the upcoming Ondo State governorship election slated for November 16 this year. Our correspondent Amadine Uyi reports.
It was the 4th regular consultative meeting with political parties and Nigeria's electoral body. The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission gave representatives of political parties present an update on preparations for the upcoming Ondo State governorship poll.
With just 29 days or 4 weeks to the Ondo State governorship election, today's meeting is no exception. Only 2 days ago, the Commission presented the register of voters to political parties in our state office in Akure. With this development, we have successfully accomplished 10 out of 13 activities listed in the timetable and schedule of activities for the election. The 3 remaining activities are the publication of the notice of poll, the last day of campaign, and election day.
He also informed them that the electoral body has set a date for the Anambra State governorship election, which has been slated for November 8th next year.
The Commission has approved that the 2025 Anambra State governorship election will hold on Saturday, 8th November 2025. In compliance with the mandatory requirement of 360 days, the formal notice for the election will be published on the 13th of November 2024. Party primaries will be held from 20th March 2025 to 10th April 2025. The candidate nomination portal will open at 9 a.m. on 18th April 2025 and close at 6 p.m. on 12 May 2025.
The chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council urged the electoral body to play its role as an electoral umpire without bias, improving the process.
Nigerians expect INEC to improve on the Saturday, 16 November 2024 Ondo State governorship election. Council urges stakeholders in the electoral process to also join in voters' education, sensitization, and mobilization to ensure free, fair, credible, transparent, inclusive, and peaceful election that will meet international standards. IPAC will lead from the front in voters' mobilization as a major stakeholder and urge political parties and their candidates to imbibe issue-based campaign and eschew politics of bitterness.
Nigeria's electoral body urged political parties to help mobilize registered voters to come out en masse and collect their permanent voters card ahead of the upcoming polls. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amaewhule-led.
Thanks to Amaewhule-led for that report. Now, the Nigerian naira has taken a hit, depreciating by 43% as of August 2024, making it one of the worst performing currencies in sub-Saharan Africa, according to the World Bank's latest Africa Pulse report. This decline is largely due to the surge in demand for US dollars in Nigeria's parallel market, limited dollar inflows, and slow foreign exchange disbursements by the central bank. Despite Nigeria's foreign exchange market reforms, including the liberalization of the official exchange rate in June 2023, these efforts have been insufficient to stabilize the currency. And of course, you know, these are one of the major conversations that, of course, we just had in the last 3 days in the Federal Capital Territory at the Nigerian Economic Summit. The moves that the current administration has made in the last 1 year and how it has completely changed the narrative concerning Nigeria's economy. It has also completely affected the value of Nigeria's currency. The expectations are not that the naira would gain. Most people, you know, would say that the value of the naira will continue to dip in the coming weeks. It's currently exchanging at 1,700 naira to the dollar, or about that. It is the worst that the Nigerian currency has ever been at. Do we expect that there would be any changes, any improvement in the next coming weeks or months? Not very many people are positive about that. The current administration also isn't very, very positive about you know, the value of the naira appreciating in the next coming weeks or months. And so, you know, like I said, you know, while we're in Abuja, the fear really, or the concern really, is that once things get this way, they almost never improve. You know, no one, you know, realistically expects that the naira would very soon start exchanging for 400 naira again to the dollar, or maybe 120 naira to the dollar again. Nobody expects that that's going to happen. This seems to be the new reality, and many people have said that this is the actual value of the naira compared to what it was before. Will, you know, the current administration be able, you know, to maybe play some magic tricks? Do they still have some, you know, cards up their sleeve? Nobody knows.
No, nobody knows, Osage, nobody knows. Although most of this has been attributed to the free floating of the naira. The moment that took place, we did see how the naira indeed plunged even further. We've had analysts who have joined us here. Some of them have had equally predicted that a time would come where the naira might even get as high as up to 2,000 naira to a dollar. That time is starting to look very close by, because we are approaching the December period. We know what happened last year in December. It was when the naira actually hit this high, because that was when the free floating of the naira took place. That's one. Secondly, we also saw an inflow of dollars, you know, circulation of dollars, I beg your pardon. And a lot of persons were wondering, where's naira? It seems pretty much like there was no local currency at stake or around. And people who came into the country at that time, those who would come in for holidays, those who would come in to, you know, purchase, buy, it seems much more like the dollar had the upper hand. That's what we saw. And then we had about 1,005, 1,004. It all looked like a dream. And one thing we can recall while this was taking place is that we did get feedbacks from the federal government that don't worry, the naira will bounce back. It's just for a short time. All of a sudden, if you recall, especially to our viewers, that particular naira, which was going to about 1,500, 1,400, all of a sudden came down a bit. So think about 1,003. And then we even got a mention from the federal government in statement that, yes, you see, the policies are working. My question, why are they not saying anything now that it's going to 1,700?
I mean, realistically, we're not doing anything, that would improve the value of the naira. If we're being honest with ourselves as a people, we're not doing much to improve the value of the naira. We're not producing more oil. We've not been able to attract more FDI, even if the Nigerian government continues to claim, or at least the president claimed so in his Independence Day speech, about $30 billion for indirect investment, but that hasn't seemed to improve on anything, with our economy. And so, if we continue on this path, then of course it will continue to depreciate, but we'll see. The River State House of Assembly, led by Victor Oko-Jumbo, is taking a strong stance against 25 lawmakers led by Martin Amaewhule. These lawmakers have been accused of undermining the House's integrity and violating Section 99 of the 1999 Constitution.
Well, the Assembly is threatening legal action and has resolved to invoke the Constitution's provisions to address the issue. Now, this follows a recent court judgment that affirmed Martin Amaewhule as the authentic Speaker of the Rivers State Assembly. Well, joining us this Friday morning is the founder of TAF Africa, a political development and policy analyst, one whom we enjoyed spending time with this week in Abuja at the NES. Dr. Jake Epelle joins us again this morning. Good to have you. And first off, have you been able to recover from all the highlights at the NES this year?
Thank you very much. It's good to be on set again with you this morning. Recovery from the economic summit, I think that's a question. You got me off the cuff. But however, it's been really a journey of experience being part of the economic summit, and hopefully the outcome of the summit will reflect on the outlook of the economy in the nation.
All right. Let's get into this. Our focus for today. We've seen back and forth River State having two assemblies, one from the left side. Of course, you have the Oko-Jumbo, and then you also have Amaewhule as well. And now there are threats, and also there are statements being made about Nigeria's 1999 Constitution, talking about violating Section 99 of the 1999 Constitution. I'd like to get your view, because I always love to ask this question. Do you think, or do you agree that the 25 lawmakers had defected from the PDP to the APC? Do you also agree with that thought? Because we saw them waving the flags, we saw them singing the song, we saw them going in for a party or a dinner, we also saw them, so many things that showed that they had defected. What's your take on that?
Well, my take is on the side of the law, even though I'm not a lawyer, but I can read what the law says. The interpretation is always given to the lawyers. However, if you go by the constitutional provision, the Electoral Act, and other judgment of previous court judgments, it is no longer a controversy to say that 25, 27 lawmakers are no longer lawmakers of the State Assembly of River State, because they defected from the party that elected them into a party that they wanted to belong. They cannot have one foot in APC and one foot in PDP. So just like the president said, subsidy is gone, these lawmakers are gone. Now, to be very objective, my concern is also what is making rounds, that the Okojumbo fashion of the National Assembly, that they were previously suspended. I think that there needs to be a clarity on that. If that is not the case, and the Okojumbo fashion is instituted by law, then the 25-27 lawmakers ceases to exist. That's very clear, and we must allow peace to reign in my dear state. These individuals responsible for some of this crisis has thrown not only the state but the entire nation into a constitutional crisis. And unfortunately, these laws, these judges that obviously has been one way or the other compromised, are given judgment that throws the spanner into the works. And so I think there's a need for the new Chief Justice to please help this country by disciplining those that should be disciplined and put a stop to this judicial nonsense that we're going through. They are simply manipulating the legal structures of the country and making the judiciary a laughingstock, and then using that opportunity to create chaos within the state. So I think it's high time the Chief Justice of the Federation, being a woman and knowing fully well that if she does not live up to expectation, history will not be very kind to her. And I'm sure she will want to do something real quick to address the imbalance in the judicial system, especially as it relates to River State. Let them stop making my dear state a laughing stock.
Yeah,
it's become
one of the things that
after another.
I understand that there is, a delay in the feed, but we'll have to manage through it. One of the things that has been put forward in its argument by the River State government, of course, going to the Supreme Court now, to see, a further interpretation of the appeal court ruling. One of the things that the argument is that, is that these people, or rather, not the River State government now, the 25 lawmakers could argue that simply waving a flag or claiming to have defected is not, enough for anybody to say that they no longer should be River State lawmakers. And of course, if they haven't resigned from the PDP and signed paperwork taking them into the APC, that they cannot be said to have fully defected to the APC. That could be their argument. So I don't know if that holds a strong enough stance with you. And then second, what would you want Governor Sim Fubara to do right now as we wrap up 2024 in order to get some level of peace in River State? Are there ways that you think he can still maybe shift a little bit to accommodate these other factions and these other persons who have strong interest in River State politics and River State structures?
Well, it's just unfortunate that things are panning out the way it is going. In direct response to your question, these guys came out publicly pronouncing their intention. They have never at any forum come out the same way they came out and said, oh, they are not members of PDP. They are not members of APC. Apart from knowing fully well that they were caught in the act. I think that's what happened when you plot evil. You don't walk in absolute wisdom, you know. So there is no place in the Constitution that says that there are all kinds of paperwork to be done. When you are aggrieved with a particular party and you wrote your resignation and came to the media and announced it and all that, I don't think there's any other route. They are not going to march to PDP and say, oh, from today we are no longer part of you. You know, other people have gone the same way by publicly announcing their intention, and the political party that received them with an open arm. The president made a pronouncement to say that, well, if children come into your house and you open your door and receive them, you're not going to open your door and exit them. So the leader of the party confirmed. The then Okorocha, whatever his name is, in River State, who was then leading the faction of APC, confirmed that he has received them. There were pictures showing, videos showing that they actually decamped and went to pledge their loyalty to the other party. Period. They are gone. And they are gone forever. Unless we want to repeal and replace the Constitution just because they have not discovered they've been caught in the act. So they are gone, you know. So in terms of solution, what I think Fubara should do, stay focused, obey the rule of law, you know, do the needful to serve the people. And that's what I keep saying to him. Serve the people. Focus on delivering the dividends of democracy and good governance. Ensure that you get results. With results, you can shut the mouth of your critics. You know, serve the people. Let the people be happy with you. And I guarantee you the political class will not touch you. If he allows these people to come on board, he has signed his death warrant, period. They will go back and do everything possible to impeach him. And so the way to go is the way of the law. Let him obey the rule of law to the extent that the law allows him to obey, not fictitious kangaroo kind of judgment that will further create anarchy in the state. You know, one man and his group cannot hold the destiny of the entire country in his palm. It's not going to happen. Whether they like it or not, it is not going to happen. The people have the power to resist anarchy, and we cannot enthrone a so-called emperor without a kingdom in a place where there is kingdom. It's not going to happen. I think we need to send that message clearly to them. This is just a group of community people, brothers, throwing the state into anarchy and thinking that they will find peace eventually. It will not happen. Amaewhule-led and the sitting FCT ministers are cousins, you know, and they cannot continue the way they are going.
Oh, okay. I mean, I pretty much, that's much more like an expose there. I mean, no one would have thought that there's some family reunion going on there. But the current speaker, talking about Jumbo himself, insists that INEC must actually conduct a by-election to fill the seats, the vacant seats of these 24 members. Do you think that this would actually happen, looking at December 13, which is just barely months away? Also, do you expect the #1 citizen, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to actually resolve this issue immediately? Because it seems like he had tried wielding the father and son stick, but that didn't bring any positive fruits or yield any positive fruits like we're seeing now. So my question is two. Do you think that INEC will or would be able to conduct the by-election? And secondly, also, are you expecting the president to actually step in now and resolve this crisis?
I think I would like to start with the last question, and I'll come back to the first. Yes, this is where leadership plays a pivotal role. You know, we don't need to tell the president to step in. He needs to step in. But the reason why we didn't get the political solution that he was embarking on in the first place was his inability to define his neutrality. You know, he wasn't neutral. It was more or less tilting towards and pleasing his minister, and that's Nyesom Wike, because that thing looks like what was drafted and handed over to the president to administer. And that's why it didn't work. You know, it was in every negotiation, if you want to be the one that would bring the warring parties to the table and allow them to negotiate and get a solution, you must practice the principle of neutrality. You must be neutral so that you can create the credibility you need and the confidence on both sides so that they will see reasons. But when you're non-neutral, this is what you get. If you're trying to favor one person at the expense of the other, this is what you're going to get, you know. So that's the problem, you know. There was no neutrality in that negotiation. And that's why the other party involved saw themselves being cheated, and therefore they couldn't. And secondly, to be honest with you, Fubara went back, and the people around him, the people of River State, refused to accept that terms, that so-called term that he signed. They refused to accept it and put him under pressure not to adhere to it. And there were also several court injunctions and judgment that restrict him from accepting that terms. So he's almost like between the devil and the deep blue sea. If he accepts it, they will turn around and use it to impeach him. If he does not accept it, they are turning around to use it to impeach him. Now they are using and creating the narrative that didn't work. The narrative was, well, you disrespected the president, you didn't follow what his directive, and that's not true. Fubara that I know him as a person, and we are from the same place. And I'm not trying to be defensive of him because of that. I'm just being objective. You know, I'm not a politician, don't intend to be one, will never be one. Quote me any day from this video, I will never, you know. Now the point is, there's so much pressure on this young man, and there's nothing he can do than to toe the line of survival. And that's exactly what is happening. And that in spite of that, he's given the state, the youths are solidly behind him, the aged are solidly behind him, because they have seen the evil that this group is perpetuating. Now, in terms of INEC, their hands are tied. There is little or nothing they can do because they are using court system to manipulate the electoral structure, which does not give them the or mandate or the authority to then conduct election. Although we also know that INEC himself have not been totally and absolutely fair and exonerated in this whole game, you know. But they have a platform within which that it makes it practically impossible for them to conduct election. You can't conduct election when there are one court judgment after the other, one court judgment after the other. So legally, INEC is doing what she should do, you know, because she cannot unturn a court judgment, whether it's a kangaroo judgment or a lacuna judgment. They cannot, you know, because all of that comes from a legal process. So there's no way they can conduct election. If I'm in their shoes, I will not, you know. Yeah. But hopefully, at the end of the day, when all the dust settles, they should conduct election for the replacement of these lawmakers.
All right.
If
Dr.
they want
Bella,
to
I want to ask if, you know...
And that's if their community that elected them endorses them to recontest. If their party endorses, yes, they can.
All right. I want to quickly ask, you know, if there's more to this, you know, than we see, because the way it has been interpreted, you know, is simply one person who has left the office of governor, currently minister, not wanting his structure. That was the initial explanation that we were given. His structure in River State to be uprooted by the new governor. And of course, the new governor is not wanting to play ball according to whatever agreements that they had before Simfobara became governor. That's the narrative as it stands. But is there more to, you know, all of this than we see? Is this also because of, you know, the ability for maybe silently the APC to have control of River State, as of course the FCT minister is serving under an APC government? You know, have we also seen the silence of Mr. President because he also wants that control of River State, even if not, you know, being headed by an APC governor? Or is there other parts of the conversation that we're not just aware of?
Well, I think the main issue that sometimes we play down even in the media is resource control. Resource control. The party concerned, you know, both ways, wants to lay hold on the resources of the state. Maybe one wants to siphon it for his personal use. The other maybe wants to manage it to serve the people. That's the difference. That's number one issue. The number one issue is resource control. You know, somebody wants to lay hands on the money of the state and manipulate it and siphon it for his own personal use, you know. And the other party is resisting that because there's no way he can provide governance, you know, effectively without proper funding. You know, that's number one. Number two is who controls the political landscape of the state, you know. And that's where they are hiding the phrase structure, political structure, you know. Now, the truth remains that if you do well and you have left a predecessor, you know, a successor who you have been able to give the support, you don't need to struggle for your political structure because that individual will help to maintain that structure and give you the leadership, even if it's a pseudo leadership that you need, you know. So is the control of the political landscape, you know, with the intention of how to manipulate it to deliver in 2020, in the next 2027, yes, you know. And then the other one is issue of influence, you know, and relevance. Someone wants to remain influential and relevant in the entire socioeconomic landscape of the state. So going back to my three-pronged presentation, number one is resource control. You know, they're interested in the purse of the state, whether they like it or not. They've created this huge political, economic conglomerate that they want to control, they want to sit on, you know, and to be able to do that, they need a lot of funding. And you know, these guys are very greedy. They never feel that they have enough. They keep getting, because they have created spending pattern that you need to consistently siphon public funds to maintain. That's just the truth. And like I said, they want to also be in charge of the political landscape. They determine, you know, one man determines who becomes the House of Rep, who becomes the State Assembly, who becomes the governor, who becomes the deputy. Just one man. Now, here is some of the things that have never been said. There are about 18 commissioners in River State Executive. This individual appointed 17, leaving the sitting governor with only one commissioner. Who does that? And several other key appointments were appointed by him. It was so bad that if you're going into the government house of River State and you're not in the good book of the former governor, someone at the gate will pick phone and call him, and he will call the governor and say, I don't want to see this person. And that's the end. It was so bad that there was an invitation that was extended to the sitting governor to appear in a church. And this same individual, out of the fact that he wanted to exert his influence, told the governor to sit down there, you're not going anywhere. And he did not go. He was literally dictating to the man when to go into the bedroom with his wife. I mean, who does that? There's
Yeah,
no
but
leader
the
that
challenge
can lead
with that
and
point
deliver
is
with his right senses,
that, you know, and I think I had mentioned this
dividends of
before.
good governance. It's
I
not,
apologize
it's
for
not,
jumping in. You know,
it
the
would-
challenge that
doesn't
I have with this narrative, you know, because it almost tries to paint Sim Fubara as, you know, some innocent lamb who just wanted to do good for his state, but, you know, the FCT minister, you know, came in and, of course, he's trying to impose on him everything. The challenge with this is that it seemed like Sim Fubara was good to go with this agreement until maybe it became too much. So maybe if Nyesom Wike hadn't, you know, allegedly now, the way the story is being told, if he hadn't maybe overdone it, if he hadn't maybe imposed so much pressure, you know, Sim Fubara was good to go with the agreement, with maybe 15 ministers appointed or House of Assembly members, with maybe not all of these appointments. If he had gotten maybe 50%, he was good to go. So he's not necessarily innocent in these agreements and this, you know, the whole crisis that has gone on.
Well, you've answered the question. You've answered the question because, you know, there's only as much as a man can take. Sim is human. There's a level of pressure you will put on a man that is also sitting and having control and the power of governance. There's, to a certain level, you will push him, and the person will react, you know, and it will boomerang. Even if the person doesn't want to react, those around him will react and make it completely impossible for him to obey those laws. Now, the truth remains, you know, go back to history, go back to videos, go back to statements that the former governor made. It was obvious that he was projecting a principle that he did not believe in. Oh, I'm not going to interfere. I'm just going to stay away. He's mature to lead, and all that. And of course, when you give someone, you know, what looks like rules, directives that will kill that person eventually, that person is not going to stick to it. It doesn't matter, you know, I cannot put my hand in the fire and the fire is burning consistently and burning me and killing me, and you expect me to stay there. At some point in time, the person will renege. If those principles are not implementable, even if the person wants to implement it, it will be practically impossible for the person to implement. Again, I said to you, I know Fubara. I've met the former governor, who is the FCT minister, just once or twice. You know, not even, you know, he was the Minister for State for Education when I put together the national albinism policy. He's, I mean, these are some of the legacies of this gentleman that he should be proud of. He was the first government official in the world to sign the first national policy on albinism globally. Google it. He put his pen to the first national policy on albinism in the whole world. You know, even though he didn't understand what he was doing and he didn't even give credit to himself for that, you understand? That was my closest meeting with him. But the more I know Fubara is a very responsible, very humble, you know, very compassionate young man. He's younger than me, that's why I keep calling him young.
He can be described that way. I think the FCT minister could also be described that way as well.
To go
the challenge once again that I have.
Relationship. Have you noticed that he doesn't say much?
Yeah. The challenge once again that I have is, you know, no matter how calm and good and, you know,
can't describe
humble
that way.
and whatnot, you know, that he's described as, you know, what I'm pointing out here is that regardless of how flawed his entry into River State Government House was, and whatever agreements, according to these narratives, whatever agreements that he had with Nyesom Wike, the only challenge here is that the FCT minister may have overdone it. It's not because he wasn't willing to play ball initially with the FCT minister and allow him nominate 15 commissioners out of 18 or 17 out of 18 or House of Assembly members. He didn't have a problem with it initially. The problem here is that the FCT minister maybe started to overdo it, you know, and so he's not necessarily innocent. If the FCC minister maybe had decided I was going to, you know, impose only 14 commissioners on you out of 18, and the House of Assembly members, I'm only going to impose 10, he would have been fine with it, which is still a major flaw in the whole conversation on River State governance. And so, you know, he might be humble, but he's not necessarily innocent in all of this. The River State House of Assembly complex, if you remember, when we spoke in Abuja, I pointed that out, that it was also burnt. It was demolished at that time. We still haven't been able to find answers as to these questions. The people who died in the River State after the River State local government elections, nobody is even talking about them today. But anyway, we're out of time. Dr. Jake Epelle, I always enjoy speaking with you, and thank you very much for always honoring our invitations and for sharing your thoughts with us. Thanks once again for joining us.
All right. Anyway, it's been a fantastic conversation, wonderful one. And this juncture would like to quickly remind you of some of the top stories we've had for this hour here on Breakfast Central. Let's show to you. And what we've brought so far so good here on News Central's Breakfast Central. So 43% ranked among Africa's weakest currencies. We brought to you this story, and INEC fixes date for Ondo Anambra State elections. That's one story we've brought to you this hour, and this one. Rivers Assembly threatening Amaewhule-led lawmakers with a lawsuit. We'll bring to you what's coming up next here on Breakfast Central.
elections in deadlock. We also bring you the news from the front pages this morning, the major stories making headlines across Nigeria this Friday, and also our top stories of the week. We're sharing that with you as well.
You're watching Breakfast Central here on News Central Television on a Friday morning. It's time to find out what big stories are making the headlines today. And joining us this morning is one who has made a comeback. Need I say so? We do have public affairs analyst Dotu Ojon in the house. Maybe we should do like drum rolls. Good to have you join us. First off, I know behind the cameras we had said, have you been? And you said you're doing fantastically well. Yeah. So we can say happy weekend, sir.
Remember?
Yes.
Happy weekend. And incidentally, it's the first Friday that I'll be here. So it's the right thing to say.
That's true.
Happy weekend.
That's true. Great to have you. Well, let's jump right into the front pages of the newspapers. Let's start off first with the Punch newspaper as we take a look at what Nigerians are indeed going to be experiencing or reading this very day from the Nigerian front pages. The Punch newspaper says, skyrocketing inflation. Nigerians lament hunger. World Bank says 129 million trapped in poverty. So if you do your calculation, which I'm going to do very quickly, 220 million Nigerians minus 129, that means we have 91 million Nigerians who are doing fine. That's what it simply means. Anyway, commodities price jump 45 to 92% under Tinubu as small business owners lament downturn. Government orders discos to replace phased out meters. Page 32 has that story. And if you have not recharged your meter or so on and so forth, there was an announcement that you may have a little bit of difficulties here and there because it starts from today and tomorrow. But we'll talk about that too in the course of our conversation. Cholera has killed 378,000. Cases rise to 14,237, according to NCDC. And I'm going to take just two more on the front page of the Punch to wrap things up. OPS carpets Tinubu reforms. CSOs demand cabinet shakeup. And finally, tanker explosion. Federal government promises to rebuild razed Jigawa town. That's all I'm going to take on the front page of the Punch. Over to you, Salvi.
All right. Away from the Punch this morning, let's go to this Nigerian newspapers. Says here, flood alert. Again, federal government warns Nigerians to relocate from river banks. Plans 5 buffer dams to prevent overflowing from Lagdo Dam. FCTA begins demolition of 50 illegal structures in Lugbe. Edo inaugurates joint transition committee today. As of course, they are going back and forth, with the election tribunal, challenging the elections, I beg your pardon. Banks lost 42.6 billion naira to fraud in Q2 of 2024. It says mobile money agents say over 300 local government areas in Nigeria without commercial banks. Ozekome unveils 50 iconic books as Jonathan blames judiciary for crisis rocking the party. These are the few stories on this Nigerian newspapers this morning.
Okay. All right. We'll take just one more paper and then we would go straight to you, Mr. Dr. John. Can we take a look at the Daily Independent? I wonder if we can actually... okay. All right. Let's look at the Guardian. I think the Guardian would work better. Let's look at the Guardian. I think I like the Guardian more. A specter of abuses, bad leadership still haunting 4 years after. That's what we say. That's what it says as we read through the front page. It has a hashtag #EndSARS protest at 4. In case you missed out, it's actually an anniversary to the EndSARS protest. Pages 4 and 5 have more on that. And you can see the depiction there. Of course, judiciary, justice, still though blind, but then again, you've got, anyway, let's move on. 129 million Nigerians living below poverty line, says World Bank. Federal government orders residents to relocate from flood-prone River Benue and Niger areas. APC accused of meddling ahead of 2027 polls as PDP LP reel from internal crisis. JAM relaxes admission age policy for 2024-2025 academic session. And finally, ex-senior cops storm PSC over alleged abandonment and poor pay. Wow. Back to you, Sange.
All right. I think the final paper that we have this morning should be the Daily Times. We can throw that in, yes. It says that Shetima woos investors to Nigeria's growing business climate, urges them to seize opportunities in nation's MSMEs, agriculture, digital economy, and others. Guiwa to invest $100 million and others commit to multi-million-dollar tech hubs. We can also find the Ericsson to build $19 million tech hub in Nigeria. Sizable number of illicit arms originally belonged to government, says NSA. Curses security personnel who facilitate movement of weapons to terrorists, bandits, and other non-state actors. Also, 1 million court judgment will not impose a bureau on Labour Party, says the NLC. Interesting. Still on the Daily Times, flooding, relocate from riverbanks, federal government warns Nigerians. Senior retired police officers decry poor pension, seek PSC intervention, and how fake CNG-powered vehicle caused explosion in Benin, NIPCO. That's also one of the things. Fact, federal government, states, local government share 1.29 trillion naira for September. I think we should start with the CNG conversation, and of course with the explosion that happened in Edo State. The fears and the concerns, of course, are rising. There's always been doubts as to whether this was a reasonable idea to transition to CNG-powered vehicles. Many people have said, of course, it's not safe. There's those who say, it's not time yet for that. Then, of course, there's those who said that every Nigerian can't even afford the transition. But what are your general thoughts on the Nigerian government advising Nigerians to move to CNG-powered vehicles?
I think there's an urgent solution that is required to the precarious situation that we're in. And the government does not want to reverse subsidy. And standing from my own point of view, also looking into the subsidy regime and the likelihood of complicated corruption that will come if we're talking about reverting it or reversing it, then we have to make use or make do with what we do have. And in the immediate, the CNG seems to be an option. There will be a few, you read from the newspaper, it's actually fake CNG. So I will advise people to actually rely on the government site that they are investing a lot of money in to convert if they so desire. But most importantly is that you cannot drive the economy to prosperity like this. One major way to drive your economy to prosperity is when it comes to transportation, is to deliberately invest in transportation. And I say that selling fuel for 1,000 naira in Nigeria would not have been an issue if the majority of Nigerians are not totally reliant on petrol. What that means is that if I can drop my vehicle in the house and take to public transport and get to where I am going, there's no need for me to concern my head or worry my head about whether that is being sold for ₦1 million or less. And that's the difference between what government says and the reality of what happens. For instance, let's look at the West African zone. And I hate it when government prints paper and say, oh, here they sell it at so-so amount of money, here they sell it at so-so amount of... I hate it because it's actually a different situation entirely. Most often, some of these states or nations that you refer to do not have oil deposit, as we do have. Most often, most of these countries you refer to, they are landlocked. For example, Rwanda is landlocked. No place to, they don't have seaport. They don't even have refineries. We have all these blessings. So we should not be competing or using them as yardstick. But most importantly is that most of these nations also invest deliberately in transportation. Most often, I do tell people that whenever you travel out of country, when you say you want to take the taxi, everybody is looking at you as if you have stolen money from your country. Because what you should have done is to jump on the train. And even our leaders, you see them hanging on the bus whenever they get to Europe. So there must be deliberate investment. And by deliberate, I'm not saying putting money in it. By deliberate, I mean managing it. The money in transportation in Lagos, for example, is enough to run all our SCDAs. But you know where the money goes? into pocket of the Agberos, into the pocket of a few touts here and there. And that's why an individual who does nothing can rise up and be more powerful than the state, and can give and can still direct people not to go out and vote on election day, and nothing will happen. So it's deliberate investment in transportation, and we should not actually throw the baby out with the bathwater because of a few incidences of CNG.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, like I said earlier, I mean, I totally agree with you. You know that our transportation infrastructure needs to be sorted out before you start to advise people to choose between petrol or CNG. You know, a country that does not have, you know, a proper railway infrastructure, and I'm not talking about the two trains we have here or there, you know, cannot be having these conversations about CNG. We also don't even have proper safety standards in Nigeria. Look everywhere. There's fake drinks, fake beverages, fake everything. Even if, you know, we still have a functioning NAFDAC. That can't be the same country that wants, you know, Nigerians to trust the conversion of their vehicles from petrol to CNG. There's that. Also, the Nigerian government doesn't use the CNG.
Okay, I think they are actually trying to buy a few vehicles. They've bought a few.
No, I'm referring to
those in power.
Not the ones they're given to Labour.
Okay,
those in power.
Those in power.
Yeah.
You know, they have access to money. So,
You know, there was a tweet. Someone had put up a tweet that the only way to promote CNG is if all the ministers and, of course, the president uses one. If they all use one, it's just a way to go. It's like being. I mean, you are a CEO of a company and you're preaching to members of the team or the employers or employees and telling them, listen, this is what the company is doing. Everyone needs to do this, and you are not doing it.
I think it's a general attitude of government, and it's one of those things I wrote about. I call it character of leadership. And one component of the character of leadership is not just telling the people the way to go, is by showing them, and it's across board. It's not even about CNG. For instance, you look at our education system. You will not, once you leave the comfort of where you are and you apply to lead the community, it becomes your responsibility to lead a life that you want them to lead. So if you have a child of school age, and it doesn't matter at this point whether you say you have the capacity before you got to power. No, it is the realism of showing people how to do things. Then it is necessary for you to have withdrawn your child from wherever private school for those periods. For instance, if teachers take their children to public school, the governor takes his children abroad, then nobody has the moral this thing to question anybody. So until we get to a point where we lay emphasis on character of leadership, where you have to behave in a certain way that you want your community to behave, then we are not going to go past this level. So I completely agree, and it's across board. If you want our education fixed today, I have a beautiful daughter. If she's in a private school, and I'm the governor of the school, everybody knows that she's going to get home and perhaps relate to me what happens in school, at least once in a while. So that alone has made everybody sit tight. For instance, the child of the headmaster or headmistress is in your class. You know that when that child gets home, she's going to tell the headmistress exactly what transpires. So most of the things we pray for, most of the things we wish for, our basic character will have actually taken care of them. And I totally agree that we can actually show people how to lead their life by leading our life exact same way so that they can follow suit.
I agree, no doubt. Well, let's take a look at the Punch this time. Skyrocketing inflation. Skyrocketing inflation. I mean, we just did a calculation not quite long ago. Nigerians lament hunger. A World Bank says 129 million trapped in poverty. The same World Bank says it's going to take about 10 to 15 years for Nigeria to get out of this mess that we find ourselves. What's your take on all of this?
Okay, between 2023, if you read the report, between 2023 and 2024, that's primarily saying between Buhari and Tinubu government of 2024, between when Buhari left and Tinubu present day, 40 million people have sunk further into poverty. And that's with the calculation. When Buhari was leaving, there were 115 million people in abject poverty.
And less
now
debt.
We have, yes, so it's a serious situation. Now, that is not to take away the fact that everywhere across the globe, when you talk about reformation reformation comes with a lot of pains. And when a reformer comes to power, because the president is said to be a reformer, when a reformer comes to power, it comes with the initial pain of trying to reform the process. But here's the fear. The fear is that over the last 1 year, people have begun to think that there's no end date to the suffering. So if you carry, there's an adage in Yoruba that I just heard this morning, that if you carry a load from here and you intend to take it to that place, once you know where you are going to drop the load, that motivates you and gives you capacity to continue to bear the pain until you get there. But when they carry a load on you and you do not know the exact place where you want to drop it, then there's a problem. So the problem is not even the reformation that brings poverty. The problem is the complication of continuous poverty, because the people do not know exactly what policy will lead to one. For example, when the liberalization of naira happened, I was extremely hopeful that the government knew exactly what to do. Now, they took it further by supporting the BDC. And when they started that, I felt, oh, the government actually knows what to do. But just about 2 months after, they stopped giving money to BDC. Then I said, okay, it's like they got another policy. Just about 3 months later, they started returning money. So he communicated clearly that maybe it's just a trial. And that's where the main issue is. If government, if the people are clear as to know exactly that this, what government is doing will benefit them, then there's going to be discomfort that you have in pain. But the complexity of the situation, or what is making it a bit worrisome, is that people do not know when all of this will end. And I'm going to cite a very simple example. In philosophy, when you have a reformer, you know that it is automatic that it's going to come with pain. But you see, and at the end of the day, the people are the beneficiary of the entire process. That means they will endure pain and the good will come later. But when the reformer has interest in whatever comes out of the process of reformation, then the people who are naturally supposed to be the beneficiary become the victim. And when I listened to what PDP said, and I began to look at their releases, and because as we have it, they are the major opposition in government. So when you want to know the way the government behaves, you look at how they talk, and you also take the books of the opposition. So I look at PDP, and there's something that Atiku Abubakar had said repeatedly, that the president had interest in some of the road constructions that are being done. Now, Lagos to Calabar, for example, I don't know whether you don't take roads, so I can tell you the story of what's happening on the road. If you get to Benin now, you are going to Asaba. As we speak now, my driver and I almost slept on the road. So the idea behind that is that you begin to ask questions as to, okay, if the alternatives are this bad, why is it that we are creating new one? Because at the end of the day, if you toll it, remember the people are still in poverty as a result of the reformation. Where do they get the money to now pay toll for the new one you are bringing? So if you go back home to think about it, you begin to suspect maybe there's an interest somewhere. So once we get to a point where any of us can identify that maybe the reformer has interest in the entire process of reformation, then we sink back to discomfort of knowing that we are not going anywhere. I am not saying that is the situation of Nigeria today. I am just telling you what I learned through philosophy.
Yeah. Another thing, I think we probably should just talk about the story, the lead story on The Guardian this morning. Today's the 18th. There's going to be the NSAS, once again, memorial on Sunday, 2 days from now. It says the specter of abuses, bad leadership, still haunting 4 years later. And of course, it shows some infographic there, panel recommendations, NSAS, and bad governance. 4 years down the line, aside the stopping of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, would you say that we have achieved much with regards to police reforms and seeing a more responsible Nigerian police force after the NSAS protest?
No, we have not. Incidentally, we are both victims, not in terms of being victim of NSAS, but also the police. You saw it on the newspaper now. The retired officers are actually crying that their take-home can no longer take them home. You see, policing in Nigeria is something that often weep about, because I see them on the road. I know how they behave towards people, and I know their capacity if they are helped. Policing system in Nigeria needs urgent help. Unfortunately, nobody is paying attention to it. I cited an example, if you remember, and I'm taking it from both the victim and the people we think are not victim. The victim are those people who get harassed daily. And the people we think are not victim are the arm-carrying police men and officers that you see on the road. They're also victim of the same system. Now, my community is a small place in Ondo State. If a police dies there, his file will get to the IG before approval is given for his pension. In the process, a lot of things happen. In fact, there was an accusation at one point in time, we couldn't establish it, that some people were trying to sleep with the woman who was trying to process the payment for her husband in the entire system. So no reasonable reform has happened. And you can trace it from even the appointment of the IG. In case you are not aware, that the president should not have appoint IG on his own volition without consultation with the governors. But this has happened over the years. So that has not been taken care of. So you can turn the office of an IG to a political office if care is not taken. You can continue to appoint people who have their leanings towards your political belief as against competent people who are scattered across the force. So these are some of the things. And the way they also still deal with people. There are instances where we'll be driving past and I will see the way they are interacting with people. I will have to come down and explain to them. See, you have to understand the thinking of the 21st century man before you are able to police a 21st century community. For example, if I see a dread on the head of anybody, it should not automatically translate to it that it's a Yahoo boy. Because the 21st century man is looking for how to express his creativity. So the fact that I'm walking and I'm seeing a sad boy, I should not be running after him like, what are you doing?
You're under arrest.
I must be able to understand the complexity of the 21st century and how to efficiently police it. There was a situation in Lagos, and I want to thank the police command, the Lagos State Police Command, for quickly, they brought a guy into the police station and collected everything he has in the police station. And in your head, you are thinking that if robbery is happening somewhere, that the first place to run to is the police station. So not much of a reform has happened. And that is also because of the fact that politicians politicize the entire NSAS. And it's so very painful. The governor of Lagos, thank God he's still sitting there, immediately after that thing happened, came on air to say, talking to an international media outfit, to say, oh, so number of people actually died in the process and all of that. And before, 3 days later, he went to Abuja, everything changed. I think we need to own our story, tell our truth, so that we can reconcile the community. As we speak now, the reconciliation cannot happen except truth is told. We must tell the exact same truth of what led to what happened, and at the end of the day, we can now reconcile the people. And one of the ways, unfortunately, to also reconcile the people, because when you drive on the street and you see the police, what comes to your head is agent of government. So one of the things to do to also reform the police, to give it credible image, is for the government to work for the people. So as long as government is not working for the people, or the people perceive that their government is not working for them, there will always be a hate between the police and the people. And as long as there's hate, they can never deliver. Let me close with this on this. You know, when you tell a little boy that, oh, I'm going to report you to police, he immediately keeps quiet. It shouldn't be so. The fact that police is coming should elicit some joy that, oh, maybe it's going to bail me out from the situation that I am in. It is philosophy. As simple as that. So as long as a child stops crying because you threaten him that a policeman is coming, tells you that there's a disconnect between what the police does and what the community want the police to do.
Very true. And for many people, 20th of October in 2020 was, the day that Nigeria died inside of them. A lot of people left Nigeria after that day. A lot of people, would almost never forgive, Nigeria. So it's, it's heartbreaking to see that 4 years after, we still we can't vouch, that we have a completely reformed police force. And it's hard to convince anyone, that anything's changing. with the country if these little details here and there remain the same.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to change.
I did a course on public leadership and everything and I think I came back, I started a program called Nigerian Police Youth Connect. When I saw that everything I was taught in the class is about the UK police because they see them as the symbol of their government. And my friend Liberos Oshoma was also telling the story of how he wanted to join the UK police and they said he should rather go and join the army. Because they don't, you get what I'm saying. They would rather have you join and post you somewhere. Yeah. But to join the police here, you are the symbol of our governance. So if you leave your police tattered the way we have left our own, if you leave your police misbehave the way we have left our own, if you pay your police peanut the way we have left our own, then no reform has actually taken place.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Just to quickly mention, I think there's still an investigation going on. The police spokesperson reported on it. A young man who was shot in Enugu a few days ago, I think sometime early this week, by the police. There's currently an investigation by the police, as to what exactly led to him being shot and killed. There's some rape allegations here and there. It's a mess. Anyway, Dr. Nigel, thank you very much for stopping by.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Sharing your views with us.
Happy weekend.
Absolutely.
I hope you understand that, please.
Happy weekend, sir.
All right. Let's take a very short break. When we come back, we have more conversations coming your way on Breakfast Central this morning.
The federal government and organized labor have agreed on modalities to reduce transport fares and prices of essential commodities, especially foodstuff. Well, in its effort to reduce cost of transportation, the federal government is expected to hold a meeting with state government to implore them to embrace CNG buses. Well, according to Vanguard, the government has also promised to incorporate labor into the Economic Council. So labor will participate and monitor economic policies of government. Additionally, the House of Representatives asked the federal government to reverse the recent petrol price hike and stabilize petrol and cooking gas prices. Well, joining us this morning is Public Relations Officer of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Lagos State Council, Ismail Adejumo. Thank you for being here, Mr. Adejumo.
Thank you for having me this morning. My pleasure to be here.
All right. Federal government, again, we did see what took place, especially recently, that's gotten everyone talking. The price of petrol has gone way beyond what Nigerians expected. And we also saw a statement made by the Labour stating that they would have preferred that the fuel price returned back to what it was before. That was 600, 700 and so on. My question to you is this morning, is that what we are going to settle for as Nigerians and as Labour? What are you planning to settle for, especially representing Nigerians, as it were?
Thank you very much. The situation at the moment is very, very critical. Critical in the sense that the government have taken the labor leadership and the entire workers for granted for too long. There is an agreement before now that once the minimum wage is fixed as 70,000 naira, ab initio, there won't be any further increase on the minimum wage or in the price of petrol. The minimum wage will be predicated because the president had an agreement with the labor leadership that any attempts to increase the pump price above that threshold, then definitely it will inflict onto hardship and pain on Nigerians. So that was why the labor leadership settled for 70,000 ab initio as against the 250 that we initially proposed in the negotiation. But be that as it may, the situation now is that even the so-called minimum wage implementation at the federal level and subnational have not been fully implemented. People are suffering. The current inflation rate have already eroded the current minimum wage, because we negotiated that the next minimum wage will be reviewed in the next 3 years. But here we are now, we are still within a year of negotiation. Already the living wage has become a kind of starvation wage to Nigerian workers. People are suffering. Most workers cannot commute from their various homes to the place of work, even to feed. Most people, I must be honest with you, in the category in the public service, are more or less on a patient on a life support. They need rescue, and government know that transportation is very critical in driving any economy. So we believe that they should do more of intervention urgent in the area of transportation. The so-called CNG buses or whatever CNG initiative is just a kind of option. It does not mean that the vehicle that are using petrol will still not be functioning, even in advanced country where they have the option of the CNG. So in the area of food intervention, something urgent and drastic must be done. And I think the engagement at this time is very, very timely and very, very impactful, because if government is not engaging with the labor leader, it is only when we want to make a move to down tool or to strike that the government will now call leadership to table. This is not good. It's like throwing us around, and it's not good for our economy.
So have there been any agreements?
As a result of strike, amounts to a lot of billions of naira being lost.
Yeah, what I'm asking is, have there been any agreements at all between Labour and the federal government? You know, these conversations on CNG and reduction in transportation costs and food prices, is there any agreement as it stands? Is there any, is the federal government promising anything to Labour at this point?
Yeah, there are some promises. This has been there for before now. The issue of reviving the nation refinery is very critical, because we know the politics and the politicking going on in the oil sector, and we don't want to be involved in those dirty politics they are playing with the local refinery, Dangote refinery, the marketers, and all these people. So they want government want to introduce bringing back the refinery to stream, so that it can be working pari passu with the local refinery, the local private refinery like that of Dangote, so that it can bring the landing cost and the cost of PMS in the country. Because since we agree on the issue of subsidy removal, we know there are still some gaps. Government still paying some subsidy to alleviate, so that the price will not go too high, as against what government was planning, that if we are to give you 250 naira as minimum wage, we jack up the price of petrol to about 2,500 and 2,000 as the case may be. Now we have not even moved from 70,000. The price has gone up to as high as 1,000, 1,150, 1,100 naira, 1,050 naira as the case may be. Depends on where you are getting it from. So all this government need to do something urgent to cushion the effect, because look at the cost of energy. Power, I pray you will never be on a band A. Those who are on band A, they spend as high as 45,000, 50,000 to recharge for electricity. As a public servant, where do you get the money from? The so-called minimum wage cannot even get a bag of rice in the market.
Yeah, so that's what I'm asking. So when you
100,000 plus,
yeah, Mr. Adejumo,
these are the challenges that the workers are facing.
Yes, I totally understand how tough it is for workers. What I'm trying to understand is the conversations that you're having with the government now. They're promising you a refinery. We've been hearing about refineries for so long. Port Harcourt refinery in particular is the most recent. They keep making that promise. So it's not even a realistic promise that you should be told, if you're negotiating with the Nigerian government today, that you should believe. Because nobody knows whenever those refineries will get on stream. And so what are they proposing? 45 CNG buses means absolutely nothing for 200 million Nigerians that have to go to and fro work every day. That is not going to reduce the cost of petrol. So is there anything realistic that you've heard from these conversations that you're having with the government that you maybe will lean on?
From the ongoing conversation, we are made to realize that they are going to bring a measure by calling on the governors at the subnational level to intervene in the area of transportation and food security, so that the current hardship of people of Nigeria can be ameliorated. And the area of reversal to the old pump price is still ongoing, because the leadership have not come up with a communique. That's why I cannot say categorically what the position of the leadership of the two labor center will be on this matter. If by end of work, at the close of work today, or probably tomorrow, we should be able to have a clear position of the, because as at day before yesterday, the NEC met, the National Executive Committee of the Labour Congress, NLC, met in Abuja, and they are trying to look into all these issues vis-a-vis the sudden meeting that government called to forestall likely strike action or down-tooling.
What would be your key demand?
But it's a going concern. The conversation is ongoing, as government have already promised that from now on they are going to involve the labor leadership in the policy formulation and implementation, so that it will not be a matter of it's just being thrown to us and we don't have a clear understanding of how this works. And from there, we'll be able to have a way forward.
Great.
That is
what are the likely key demands? As clear as possible. Not vague demands of, you need to reduce the cost of living. What are the likely key demands? And please hold on, Mr. Adejumo. Kindly hold on.
Hello.
Kindly hold on. What would be the key demands that you have? I want us to also keep in mind that the NLC president, Joe Ajaero, still has his case with the Nigerian police, with the treason charge that was thrown at him. So what is the strength of labor at this point, and what are the key demands that you would have to the Nigerian government?
Thank you very much. The current demand of working people of Nigeria is the government to sincerely implement the agreed 70,000 minimum wage across board and pay all the accumulated arrears from March this year. The wage award that are supposed to bridge the gap for subsidy removal have not been paid. The arrears is still there from March. They have not paid it. So we are calling on government to pay the wage award arrears, implement the so-called minimum wage fully across board, because what was implemented in September salary was 40,000 across board for all workers. We don't know the breakdown. So the consequential adjustment of salary also need to be paid, because the government, if you remember vividly, on the 1st of May this year, when we are celebrating Worker Day, pronounced that they are going to be 25% at 5% consequential adjustment for salary earners on consolidated public salary structure, which is one of the worst scale in the category of salary scale. So we want government to implement that sincerely as soon as possible, pay all the arrears of the wage award, implement the minimum wage fully, and come up with other initiatives to support the workers, the civil public servants, both in the public and private sector, in the area of food security, transportation, and other form of relief, so that the working people of Nigeria can be more committed and dedicated to their work.
Mr. Adejumo,
those are the demands.
All right, Mr. Adejumo, that's fine. So, in other words, are you waiting for the government before you release your demands? That's one question I'm asking. Are you waiting for the government before you bring out your demands, listing it categorically, stating it clearly? That's one. Secondly,
our demands are very, very sacrosanct, are very clear. It has been there, and the leadership have already put it before the government several times. You understand? It's just for them to implement. Government have not been sincere in honoring agreement. I'm sorry to use that word. So it is when they push us to the wall that we're about to invoke some of the instruments in the labor movement that they will now call the leadership overnight and be engaging. And in industrial relation, when your employer call you for negotiation, you have to answer at that time, so that all other issues can be put to on the table and analyzed on merit, so that they will begin to implement them one after the other. But all at the demand of the working people of Nigeria are very clear. No one is ambiguous. We want them to reverse and reduce the current price of petrol. Because if you look at even the World Bank have said it, that any further increase from this moment will cripple and jeopardize the gains of the purported, the so-called subsidy removal. Secondly, look at the inflation rates now. Almost 129 million Nigerians are trapped in poverty, as released even by the same World Bank. All this neoliberal policy of government needs to be critically analyzed.
Okay, that's fine.
Vis-a-vis the current reality in Nigeria, because Nigeria is not Britain, Nigeria is not Canada, and we are copying some of this model which cannot be fully domesticated, that to impact the lives of an average Nigerian. So we want the government to do an evaluation of all their policies since they came on board on 2023 at this moment, and do a kind of a retrospect. Which policy is affecting the people positively, which one is affecting the people negatively, and reverse.
Okay, that's fine.
So this is not a rocket science. It's not something we begin to clamor for at every time of engagement on the media. But government should now they are bringing the labor leader into their planning and implementation. Then they will be able to tell them and give them the feedback from the working people of Nigeria. So that there won't be this friction of strike today, strike tomorrow.
I would really appreciate if we can get the answers very quickly. We do understand your grievances with the government, so we try to run as much as possible with time, because we have very limited time for this conversation. So we can actually get a lot of responses from the questions we do have to ask. So my question to you right now is, have you received the CNG buses from the federal government? Has Labour received the CNG buses that were promised you by the federal government? Have you received them? And secondly, what if, I'm coming, just hold on. And secondly, what if the government does not listen to you in reversing the fuel price? What next?
Thank you very much. As for the issue of CNG, it's very clear. Even our Congress president have pronounced it on several media platforms that the so-called 46 CNG buses that was released are mere, I won't use the word that is derogatory. It's like a carcass. So it is not even practicable. I don't know the rationale for the implementation, how they are going to deploy it in the 36 states.
Have you received them?
It's abysmally low and inadequate. That is one. Two, as for if government refuse to back down or reverse the current pump price, then the leadership will take a decision. Our here in Lagos is to follow the directive of national. The national leadership knows better and how and manner they are going to come up with their decision. And the decision, once it's taken, it will cascade down. And that is where we will, at the subnational level, we do a total implementation. Whatever the decision, that is our own role in this struggle. We are not to decide for the government, decide for our leader. Our leader will decide, communicate the decision, and we are here to implement fully. If it is strike, if it is down tooling, if it's any measure, if it is protest, we are fully ready to implement the directive of national body of NLC at any time.
I don't know if you can give us updates, on what the current state of the charge against Joe Ajaero is. Is he, of course, is the NLC bothered by it, and does this threaten the strength of the labor union?
Not at all. Whatever charges, all those frivolous and top-up charges against the Congress president cannot hold water. And the workers of Nigeria are standing solidly behind the Congress president any day, any time. He's a man of proven integrity. He has no any baggage. He has no any skeleton in his cupboard, as we understand. And if the security have any adverse information as against his dealing or whatever, they should do the needful and follow due process. Yeah. But as for us, we are solidly behind our Congress president.
Yeah. And are you also aware
with him at any time?
Are you also aware, that when you say that the government should reverse to its previous petrol prices, it means that you're asking the government to go back to paying subsidy?
No, what we are saying is that since government have pronounced that there is subsidy is gone forever, and before the electioneering campaign process, all the major stakeholders agreed that subsidy is a scam, is a cankerworm that would need to be eradicated. So we agree with the government, but the manner and approach of implementing the subsidy regime is what needs to be, the government needs to be conscious about. They need to get the feedback and the pulse of Nigerians in terms of pain. Hardship, untold hardship is inflicting on the masses, and most especially the working people. So we want the government to reason along with the yearning and aspiration of Nigerians vis-a-vis all this policy, how it's impactful both positively and negatively, so that they can come to terms and do some kind of a reversal when necessary.
A reversal of the policy or a reversal where now?
It is for the people. Yes, policy is for the people, but when it is not impacting as expected, then it needs to be reversed, and that's why the leadership of NSC are calling on the government.
So I'm playing devil's advocate here. If you say that the government should reverse, you're simply saying government should reverse the end of subsidy payment and go back to paying subsidy. Is that it?
No, not at all. I've given you the position that it is the manner and approach of implementing the subsidy. Should be done in piecemeal. It's like you want to give back to a baby. You must go through pregnancy. Through pregnancy, you go through labor. Through labor, you have a batch child. Through batch child, you go through some.
We're saying pretty much the same thing. So you want the government to go back to paying subsidy,
the framework,
but take it in stages.
It should be in phases. That's what we are saying.
So again, the government should go back to paying subsidy, but phase it out, and remove
it. We are not saying government should pay. It is responsible. The government that have been paying subsidy before, does Nigeria collapse? Nigeria will never collapse. If they are not paying subsidy today, nothing will happen. Whatever the impact, we will weather the storm together. That is it.
All right.
We need to be sensitive to the plight of the people. That's what we are saying. Anything like you want to give somebody an injection, you put it through a particular point, and it's inflicting too much pain. You have to go to another source. That is why government policy is subject to contestation and debate, a robust one. So no policy is fixed in cast in iron or a rocket science.
Thank you so much, Public Relations Officer.
Even the World Bank has advised that any further increase will inflict more pain and agony, and it will defeat the gains that are supposed to derive from the subsidy regime. So that's our position. We are not anti-government.
Thank you, Mr. Ismail Adejumo. Thank you so much for
implementing all these policies.
Thank you for talking to us.
All right.
We look forward to speak with you again. Hopefully, we would get an update on any of the meetings that you have as well. We're out of time. I'm afraid we're out of time, but we would have you join us. Possibly you'll be here live so we can discuss even further on the decisions the NLC would be taking, especially now that you'll be added to the decision-making team. So the policies would indeed be well thought out, just as you've mentioned, from the federal government. Thank you for your time. And that does it on the show for today. It's been a very, very interesting show. 2 hours seems to be very little to discuss these issues. But then again, what else can we say? It's been a fantastic one for us all through the week, all the way from Monday to Wednesday. We're live in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, where New Central partnered with the NESG, bringing to you the NES at 30.
Absolutely, and it was, pretty interesting 3 days summit. We're glad to be back here. It's time for us to wish you a very interesting Friday ahead. We're going to be back here again on Monday, but please remember to catch up with Breakfast Extra with Judith Atibi and Mazino Appeal all through the weekend.
And thanks to them as well for holding it down yesterday, Judith and Mazino, and of course Matthew and the likes. Big thanks as well to the team, the ladies behind the cameras. Amazing, you're amazing, and of course, what do they call it, baby or something? Yeah.
All right. See you next week. Thank you very much for joining.
Bye.